Historically, there's a great deal of research on using DC current to accelerate healing processes. Delivery of that current has been difficult. So typically you would have to insert needles or electrodes into the skin in order to get enough current through a tissue. Or if you were doing it externally to get enough power, you'd actually end up causing burns on the skin. So one of the things that the guy who invented this figured out was how to get enough current past the skin to be meaningful. So there's that piece. You know, people ask me, well, what's the difference between this and what you'd find like a regular E-stem unit or a TENS unit or something like that? So most of the units people use an AC current, which is an alternating current. The current's bouncing back and forth. And the only reaction your muscles can have to that are to close up and tighten. They just go on protect. And that's the only thing they can do. You turn up the power and they're going to tighten more. And you can tighten them so much that you cause injury. So you have a limitation there. You're limited on how much power you can push through. And there's a principle to using electricity in the body. The more power, the more change. The bigger the power, the bigger the change. So the more progress you can make. So that was one limitation, is that power. Now with that muscle shortening effect, the other thing you can't do is move. So if I shorten it and I have it at a safe level of power, but then I start moving, I'm at risk again. So you can't move while that current's going through. And there's some really cool stuff that happens when current's going through. Okay, when current goes through the body, we have this wonderful stuff called connective tissue. And it holds everything together and it creates this lattice work and this framework and it creates this incredible system of communication in the body. But what happens with injury is sometimes that tissue gets damaged, and when it lays back down, just to make it simple, it gets all glommed up, okay? And there's other stuff in between all that connective tissue, and it's like a gel, okay? When you run a current through that stuff, it starts to turn to more of a liquid. So you have this opportunity to reorganize that connective tissue. When you can't move, you really lose that opportunity. So to have movement to be able to reorganize this tissue means that you can literally reconstruct the body in a relatively short period of time. And so the inventor recognized the limitations of not being able to turn the power up and not being able to move, and realized, whoa, if we could get past those, we're gonna have something really big on our hands. Okay, so he went back to DC. He's like, DC is where it's at. DC is what we already have inside. We already have a direct current flowing through us. We have a polar north and south because of it. Okay, it's very weak, but it's there. And so what he did was he found a way to fundamentally replicate that waveform that we have in our bodies. So when we run the current, this isn't the reaction to the current. The reaction is stasis, so we can move. And what's really cool is when we run that current, people can usually move to a much greater range of motion. And so if we do that a few times, all of a sudden the brain realizes, oh, I can move that far. And the brain gets convinced, and it allows them to keep that range of motion. When somebody has an injury, you know, one of the biggest things you have with injury is muscle spasm. We can get that to release, okay? Releasing muscle spasm allows for continued improved blood flow. Now, while the treatment's going, you have that DC current going, so you have that acceleration of processes while the current's going. So there's a lot of things that go on while we're doing a treatment, but I think the keys to keep in mind are the increased blood flow through through damaged tissue. Blood flow is oxygen to tissue, so in order to recover tissue, you need blood flow. Getting rid of that muscle spasm that restricts blood flow, restricts movement, and causes increase in pain. So that's another thing. Restoring the functional pattern. That's, you know, great big words, but really all it means is moving right. You know, if you can't move right, you're not going to recover well. So the current can help people to move right. And then strength. You know, our muscles are like shock absorbers. We need our shock absorbers to soak up the shock that we encounter in daily life. If they're not doing that, we're going to suffer. And so we can tell the muscle to go here. We can actually use the current to strengthen the muscle. Rather than loading with weights that might be dangerous, we use the current. It loads the muscle, and then we can move in a safe way, in a very proper way, and the brain gets it. The brain starts to respond, and the body starts to move that way all the time.